Welcome to Fitzdog Radio, my lovely listeners. I appreciate you tuning in every week. Some weeks I feel really good, and some weeks I feel like I'm gonna cry. I could have been an actor, Jesus, but no, I'm a little off my game. I'm going off an antidepressant right now. Which, let me tell you something. If you're gonna do it, talk to your psychopharmacologist, talk to your psychiatrist, make sure you taper off very slowly, replace it with exercise, meditate, communicate, give yourself a break. It's very difficult to go off of them. Don't get in trouble with that shit. But I'm in a place now. The pandemic is ending. It's over. Wouldn't it be great if there really was a day where it just ended? And you could just like fucking V-Day out in the streets, hugging, kissing, high-fiving. It was kind of like that. I did a roast a couple days ago for Adam Egett, who is the booker manager of the Comedy Store for the last 12 years. And a guy that I'm close to, he booked me at that club. I never worked the Comedy Store because it was for fucking like comics, hacky comics. There was obviously some phenomenal comics that worked there, but there was a lot of guys that were doing long sets that were fucking washed up. There was a lot of like porn stars hanging out there. There was a lot of cocaine. Some of you are going, Greg, then why wouldn't you be there? Because I'm married, okay? No, so Adam came in and then he brought me in because I knew him from the Tempe Improv, and he had me start performing there. And then, you know, every week you leave your avails. And I think he gave me, over the 12 years, I think he gave me every single show I asked for, which was phenomenal because there's no place else most comics want to be. It's just, it's the club. Great crowds, great lineups. And so he's leaving. Joe Rogan has brought him out to, is that news? I think that's out there. I believe that's out there. He's going to Austin, and he is going to, I think, book and maybe run Rogan's new comedy room. And we're going to miss him. So we had a roast, and it was a fun night. Roasts are the best. Jeff Ross hosted it, and there's just nobody better at putting the mood right for a roast. He made everybody laugh, and he's so easy to make fun of. He's such a fat-faced Jew. And, you know, you can say anything to him. And he was just great. And there was a lot of good comics on the lineup. And everybody, Eleanor and who else? The jokes were just, you know, really, a lot of them were well-written. One guy bombed. I'm not going to mention who. One guy bombed. And that's always fun, too. Like, watching somebody bomb at a roast because then everybody shits on them for it was pretty sweet. And then if you want to know who you are as a person, because don't we all really want to know? Deep down inside, you can wonder what your friend... You can wonder what the average person thinks about you, which you never should. I mean, that's one of the things that we talk about in this podcast that I do with my guest today is I think his quote was, "What people think of you is none of your business." But if it is your business and you do want to know, then sit on the dais of a roast and see what the other roasters say about you. That is what people think about you. And apparently, people think I look old. That seemed to come up. And I guess I do look old, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you look like. It matters what you feel like. And I feel really old. No, I feel young. Not this week. This week I feel like I'm fucking trudging through mud. So we had a lot of laughs, and you can't see it. It was not recorded. It was one of those roasts that was so inappropriate. They all are now. I don't know how the Comedy Central is going to continue to do roasts because nothing is okay to say anymore. And I'm back there tonight. I'm doing a show. Where am I? What time am I? 9:30 tonight. I'm at the store. Big weekend. I'm going to play some golf. Playing beach volleyball for the first time on Sunday with the boys. They call us the Shirts because we are the only guys on the beach that wear shirts while playing beach volleyball. Easy to spot. A lot of bucket hats. A lot of hats that look like this, covering up our ears and our necks. There's a lot of sunblock. There's music. There's classic rock playing as opposed to, I don't know, R&B that you might hear on some of the other. Because there's a lot of people playing volleyball. You know, a lot of the nets are near each other. There's like maybe 12 games all going on in the same area. And then I'm going to do a little yoga. Been doing the yoga on Sunday mornings on the beach. So we're back. We're back in the flow here in L.A. It feels good. Going to a party tomorrow night at somebody's pool. It's a big weekend. I need it. I need to snap out of this. I fucking walked off the golf course today. Dennis Gubbins was being annoying. But that's not the only reason I walked off. I was playing terrible. I was not feeling it. I needed to go. Need to get the fuck out of there. Anyway, why am I doing an intro? I'm in a shit mood, and I'm trying to be entertaining, and I'm sorry if I can't be right now. So I'll read you. Here's some mail from last week. John Maple said, "Holy shit, what an interview with Andy Dick. Somewhere between the ethos of David Hasselhoff and that video where he's drunk on the floor asking for a hamburger, and the pathos of Betty Davis at the end of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Good job, Greg. Good job, me. How about good job you, John Maple, with your esoteric references, ethos and pathos and naming a Betty Davis film? Damn. Why can't the rest of my listeners write emails that are that interesting? Jim Tripp wrote in, not to shit on Jim Tripp, but his was, not as smart. He said, tinnitus. I complain about having tinnitus. Don't worry, you'll get used to it in a year or two. Probably can be blamed on the Danceteria or the Limelight. Those were the nightclubs I used to go to in New York back in the 80s. Some say you can put an ear device in. Not going to do that. Could be caused by plaque in your neck veins. That's very possible. I need to get that tested. Captain Kirk from Star Trek, the actor, but you don't know the guy's name? He had it. He allowed it to bother him. He got over it eventually. Cheers. All right, Jim Tripp. Here's something that can make you feel better. I don't know if you have tinnitus, but maybe you have debt coming at you from all different directions, and you don't know how to deal with it, and it's overwhelming, and you're losing money, and your life's falling apart. Upstart is going to help you out. Here's the thing about credit card debts. I got my first credit card. I was in college, and I was walking through the student union, and they literally were giving out Frisbees. And I go, yeah, I want a Frisbee. They go, yeah, just fill out this form. And I did, and they handed me a credit card. And I was like, are there rules? And they're like, nope, just get in debt. We'll do the rest. And so I did, and it took me years to get out of it. And the interest rates, they climb through the fucking sky, and it's crazy. So if you have credit card debt, get rid of that shit. Maybe you've got like any other high interest debts, or maybe you want to do a home renovation, or you need some money, or you want to consolidate. Upstart lets you compare rates. They get you the best loan from one of their partners, their trusted partners. You can get a loan between $1,000 and $50,000. And they look at things besides just your credit score, because your credit score may suck. It could be 100. 100's not good. That was good junior year of high school in biology. It's not good when you're trying to get a loan for a house or whatever else you need it for. This way, you got one monthly payment. It's simple. It's low. It'll make you be able to open up your mail again instead of avoiding your credit card payments. You can get your funds as fast as one day after your loan is accepted. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/Greg. That's upstart.com/GREG. Don't forget to use our URL. Let them know I sent you, folks. That's how you support the podcast. Make sure you use me. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Go to upstart.com/Greg. Here's something else I want to talk to you about, your lawn, my lawn. Look, people are judging you. It's the first thing they see. If you got brown spots, maybe you got nibbling grubs. You got nibbling grubs? I got some nibbling goddamn grubs. Get rid of them. Sunday, it makes your lawn thrive. How? Very simple. They mail you a pouch. You hook it into your hose, and you spray your lawn for about 15 minutes a week. That's it. The rest, my lawn, I can putt off it now. It looks beautiful. I do Instagram photos half naked on my lawn now. Go check it out. Go look how beautiful it looks. And look, there's a lot of things that people want to do for their lawns, but these people do it. They do it eco-friendly. They use ingredients that you would never think you would use on a lawn, like seaweed, iron, and molasses. Maybe you got pets. I got pets. I don't want them getting sick, so I use Sunday. They can tell the soil and the climate data of your area to come up with a specific tailored plan, and you get everything that your lawn really needs to make it thrive. It's real easy to use. It's easy to sign up for, and you're going to be very impressed with the results. So, let Sunday take the guesswork out of growing a greener, more beautiful lawn this spring. Visit getsunday.com/Fitzdog to get $20 off your custom lawn plan at checkout. That's $20 off your custom plan at getsunday.com/Fitzdog. Cannot recommend it highly enough. My lawn really does. It looks beautiful. All right, check it out. All right, let's get to it. My guest this week, his full name is Joe Pantoliano, but you know him as Joey Pants from The Sopranos and about a million other huge movies. This guy, I've had other Sopranos on. I had Steve Sciarippa on. I had Michael Imperioli on. And this was a really fun one. This guy, his IMDb page is staggering. He was in MASH. Remember the TV show MASH? He was in that. Risky Business, Hill Street Blues, The Goonies, La Bamba, Empire of the Sun, The Fugitive, NYPD Blue, Memento, the Bad Boys series. How about The Matrix? How about Cypher from The Matrix? I mean, it just goes on and on. I was so thrilled to get this guy on my podcast, and then he asked me to do his podcast, so now we're podcast lovers. And he came on with his daughter, Daniella, who's lovely, and they have a very cool relationship with each other, and we talked about depression. We talked about where he's coming from in his life and where he's going, and it was really cool talk. So kick back, light a stogie, pour a cup of coffee, and enjoy my talk with Joey Pants. All right, I tune into this Zoom call. I'm supposed to be in charge of this part of the show. This is the Fitzdog radio part, and you got this Italian family, and the fingers are up in the air. There's accusations. You did this on Mother's Day. You fucked up the family. What? Can you wait for me to at least join the call?
Well, we're a very passionate family, and you know, we're only Italian in title only. I think Daniella's about, what, 25% Italian?
Yeah, like 30%.
Yeah, I mean, we're really Hobokenites. It's more of a regional fury that lingers through our veins.
It's more of an attitude than a genealogy at this point?
That's right. So what we were talking about while we were waiting for you, because you were fucking late.
It's 3:01.
And what we were talking about was, Danny asked me how my week has been. And I said, well, you know, I finally got the lawnmower back. So I've been doing the lawn. And that took 3 tries because it had grown out. And we were away visiting my oldest daughter and the grandkids for 3 weeks. And she said, "Oh, I remember Mother's Day because Mother's Day just passed this past week, Sunday." She said, "I remember that was the biggest fight you guys ever had because I, on my return, looked out the window and saw all of this brown spot on my beautiful grass." And that's how this started too. We don't have grass anymore. It's all weeds. But it turned out that it wasn't mud or dried up land. It was actually yellow flowers. And so we got into a big fight over that. But Daniella, the reason why my wife was so amped up is Daniella and I had a secret. And I told her, I'm going to come home for Mother's Day and don't tell Mom. And I think Danny was like, what were you, about 13 or 14? You remember?
14 or 15, and I don't remember this part of it, the having a secret part.
Yeah, so don't tell Mom. And we have a bell. We have a bell that goes off when you go up the driveway that tells people if somebody's coming onto the property, onto the compound. And
where are you living at this point?
But it's the same place. We're in Connecticut, Fairfield, Connecticut. And so the bell goes off, and Nancy is like, "Motherfucker, why didn't you tell me?" Because the house was a mess, and I was like anal retentive washerwoman, and like the couch is not in the right place. I would throw
anything
conniptions.
Could set him off, and this time I think he was still on.
I was on.
Were you in recovery, or were you still on pills?
Stoned out of my mind on Vicodin and
Vicodin. I think.
And so, so she said, "Why didn't you tell me he was coming?"
Hundreds of milligrams a day. So when that beep would go off, we would be like, "Uh-oh, get everything, right in the same place," or he's any little thing.
The problem is that I've traumatized my children, and it's taken a long time to be able to laugh about stuff like this, because I think I spent, from the moment I met my wife, Nancy, from the moment I met her on a blind date, I was convinced that she was going to leave me. Just a matter of when. Once we get married, she'll leave me, or once the prenup is over, she'll divorce me, or, like, what's her angle? Why is she pretending to love me?
What's her breaking point?
And so she,
why did you think she was going to leave you? Because of the addictions?
No, I had such low self-esteem. It's the old Groucho Marx joke, why would I want to be a member of any club that would have me as a member?
Right.
It's like, well, like what would she be doing? Maybe even my friends, when they met Nancy, would say, "What the hell is she doing with this guy?"
Yeah, she's a beautiful woman, and she's got a nice spirit. I watched a couple clips of you guys together, and it's a very nice energy. I like. And
I thought it was an act. I thought that spirit, that light that lived inside of her was, nobody's that nice.
Right.
Eventually she's going to turn into my mother.
Right. It's a matter of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me set up this podcast properly, since we're sort of jumped in. It's an honor to have you on. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on, and I'm going to go do your podcast. You've got a new podcast that's called No Kidding, Me Too. Mm-hmm. And it's Joey Pants and his daughter Daniella, who you clearly had way late in life. So that's always an interesting relationship, because when you have somebody later in life, it's you've kind of figured, most people have figured shit out already, but it sounds like you were still in the process of dealing with some demons while she was still growing up.
Oh, she was the middle kid. We have 4 accidents. I have a 40-year-old son, a 35-year-old daughter, and then Daniella, and then our youngest is 22, Isabella.
How old are you, Daniella?
29.
And what's your story? Where do you live?
I live in Hoboken.
Oh, you're in Hoboken?
Yeah,
I'm in Hoboken. Hilarious.
Yeah, it's the best.
Wait, so Joey, you were born in Hoboken?
was born and raised there.
Yeah.
Actually, I was born in hospital in Jersey City. This apartment that we have, I've had it for 37 years. So the kids, every time we would come to New York, we'd all stay in the apartment, and it had a kind of a spiritual reminiscence for me to say, well, this is how miserable my life was. This is 5 people in a 2-bedroom with 1 bath. So, stop complaining.
Meanwhile, now a 2-bedroom in Hoboken, New Jersey is actually like a sought-after piece of real estate.
Oh, people come in here and they're like, this is so nice.
Yeah, right. And wait, so Danielle, you never grew up living there, though, did you? Or did you?
No.
You always lived in Connecticut.
Yeah, well, we lived in Santa Monica till I was 8 years old. Then we moved to Connecticut because the schools were better.
Right.
And then I moved to Hoboken a couple years ago. But I've been coming to Hoboken my whole life. I've always loved Hoboken. All my friends always wanted to live in the city, and I always wanted to live in Hoboken.
That's hilarious.
And Danielle is the 5th generation Pantoliano that lives in Hoboken.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
And so when you go there, Daniella, do you feel like you have roots here? Do you know people in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I do. It's such a lovely community. I was just talking to our super's wife who's lived in this building since she was 2 years old.
Wow.
And it's just so nice to walk in my building and be like, hey, my cousin lives in the building, my 2 cousins. I go to the dog park. I know people on the street. It's a very loving, lovely, helpful community. It's wonderful.
And what's your story? Did you get the acting bug as well, or what's going on in your life?
No, I didn't get the acting bug. I never caught really any kind of bug. So my dad always wanted me to be an actor. I think he's the only actor that wanted one of his kids to be an actor. Uh-huh. But I don't know. It just, sometimes I want to act, but I was kind of just pushed into theater. I transferred my school. I went to community college because I had a breakdown. And then I went to a 4-year college and I just roomed with all theater majors. So I was like, I'll go to the theater club with you. And then I started taking theater classes and then film classes. And then I did this summer film program. And I was like, I like this and I'm good at it. And I don't know what else to do with my life. So I'll do this.
Yeah.
I'll take over the family business, essentially.
Right. Well, that's what my father was, a radio guy, and look at me now. I never dreamed that this would be what I ended up doing, but there's something about it. It's almost like a show of love, that you saw your parent follow their dream. You saw the fulfillment that can come from it, and there's a connection there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the podcast a little bit. You guys are doing something that's based on a book, Joey, that you wrote by the same title, No Kidding, Me Too.
Actually, it was a documentary that I made.
Oh, okay.
This book came out after we made the documentary. That's called Asylum, My Hollywood Tales Through the Great Depression. And that was about finding out that I was crazy, and that all of these addictions, what I called my 7 deadly symptoms, was symptomatic to these unresolved emotional trauma as a child. I've been an advocate going around the world, really, with the documentary and talking to people, using the documentary as like an evergreen calling card, and we've been wanting to do something to be able to bring the conversation to people, kind of like 12-step meetings, but virtually through conversations with high-profile people in all walks of life. Because in the back of my mind, subconsciously, I always thought that if I could become successful and get inside my mother's black and white 12-inch television, that all these terrible feelings that were brewing inside of me would go away, would magically go away. And so as I was able to achieve success, because that was my drug of choice. That was my primary drug of choice, was success. The more I got it, that feeling didn't go away. That feeling didn't go away.
Did it almost make it feel worse that you were achieving externally and that internally it wasn't keeping pace with it? Did that make the depression even more acute?
Yeah, the conversations were, what is wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You know, like, snap out of it, schmuck, you got everything you wanted. You know, I would look out this window at the pond. Can you see my backyard?
Lift it up a little.
Are you at Mia Farrow's house?
Up a little more, Dad. Up a little more.
Now,
No, tilt the computer. There, right there.
Nice. Oh, look at that.
so I would look out this window in summer, winter, fall, and like, why can't I feel anything?
Right,
You know?
right.
Why do I want to kill myself? Because I really wanted to die, and was
Were you
like,
suicidal?
yeah.
Did you ever attempt it?
No. Well, you know, I would wake up in the morning, and it was like, you know, like, fuck, I'm still here. I guess I was attempting it with the drugs.
Right.
You know, I was hoping that I would take enough that I just wouldn't wake up.
Yeah. So when you were feeling these things, was there any sense, because growing up the way you did, it sounds like there wasn't a lot of awareness about what mental illness was. So what was the point at which you started to say, oh, I have this, I have depression? I'd never put a word to it or a disease to it before. What was the moment that you started connecting that?
I was working on it. I had finished The Sopranos, and you know, I had won an Emmy award, and so that got me a lot of clout in the industry. And I had done a couple of series that both had failed over 2 seasons for CBS, and while I was doing this show, somebody, through a friend of mine that helped me, collaborated with me on my first book, a guy named Eddie Mordahovich, introduced me to a kid that was trying to get this movie set up about his relationship, his actual autobiographical relationship with his mother, who was schizophrenic, and how mental disease affects the family, not just the person with the disease, right, or diagnosed with the disease. And I thought, and it was an Italian-American family, and we were taking a lot of heat from these Italian-American anti-defamation leagues for being on the show, for actually accepting a job on a show that made Italians look bad. So I thought, well, you know, I'd like to play a protagonist who's Italian-American, who's decent man, family man. And so I took this job for those very reasons, for selfish reasons. And as a producer, I was able to get Marcia Gay Harden to play my wife, and we were shooting in Florida, Miami area. And as we started working, the first thing that happened was my friend Charlie Rocket, who was an actor comedian, had called, and we were very close. He actually married my wife Nancy and I, and we talked for a few 20, 30 minutes and made plans and caught up on the call, and then talked about getting together for Thanksgiving. And then 2 days later, about 3 days before we started shooting, Nancy called and said Charlie had slit his throat, killed himself.
Jesus.
And then we started shooting, and then Marcia showed up, and I was like, who does Marcia remind me of? It's like, what she's playing this on-set auditory hallucination, schizophrenic, in denial, there's nothing wrong with me kind of thing. And I'm like, Jesus, who is that? Who is that person? And it was my mother. And I said, whoa. And so I had these long conversations. I couldn't sleep. We were shooting in Hollywood, Florida. And I would take these like 4 a.m. walks on that boardwalk and doing the math like, well, if she was nuts, what if she was nuts? I always thought she was Italian American. I thought it was ethnic behavior, Yeah. Her birthright to worry about everything. I said, well, gee, if she's nuts, maybe what's bouncing around in my head, maybe I'm nuts too, and that's how that began.
It sounds a little bit like another famous father and or mother and son, Tony Soprano, realizing his mother has mental illness, and it dawns on him that maybe that's where he got it. Yeah,
well, Tony Soprano's mother, my mother makes Livia Soprano look like Mary Poppins.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What was it? Severe depression or anxiety or neuroses?
She was, I don't know. My mother was never diagnosed, but she hated men. And like I in explaining about my wife and waiting for Nancy to turn into my mother, like all the other women I've fallen in love with prior to Nancy, that my mother would sit me down and say, the best man in the world ain't good enough for the worst hua. And she would tell me these stories about a grandfather I had, her father, who I had never even met, and what a scumbag he was. And that when I die, you make sure that you don't bury me on top of him. Bury me on top of my mother. I don't want to be on top of that cocksucker. Uh-huh. And then, after she died, we found out that he sexually abused all of the women in his family, his daughters, his own sister. He was a nightmare. He probably, he was crazy as a bedbug. They called him Dopey Gus. Yeah. If you're interested, you can read all about it in that first book I wrote, which was called Who's Sorry Now? But, she did not discriminate. My father, her cousin, turns out that my cousin Flory was in fact my biological father. I never knew that. There was rumor about it, but
really?
But I'm actually not a Pantoliano. And my father, Dominic Pantoliano, knew this also. Everybody knew that. All the adults knew that I wasn't his son, but he gave me his name, and to the day that he died, and my father, Flory, but my mother died before them, and even after my mom was gone, my father Dominic took care of my father Florio, who had emphysema, and he couldn't get around, and he would buy him groceries or take him to the hospital when he couldn't breathe. And he literally, I'm not kidding, when Flory died, cousin Flory, my father called me up sobbing, saying that Flory had died. He died in my father's arms.
No kidding.
Yeah. It's really an interesting story. And, and my father was a wise guy. Florio was in and out of prison, spent 21 years of his life in federal penitentiaries. Yeah. Not all at once, of course, but from the time he was like 20 years old to the time he was 51, 21 years of half of his life was inside federal prisons. And so, he was a bona fide tough guy. And my mother would treat him with the same disdain and smack him around the same way she would smack around my father, the working stiff.
Yeah, right. So when it comes to depression, how much of the stuff, because you grew up this kind of hard scrabble, so your mom was a bookie as well, I was reading, and you grew up amongst all this trauma. How much of your depression can you attribute to the basic nature versus nurture argument? How much of it do you think was in your blood, and how much of it do you think was caused by these external things?
It's all nature. It's all environmental. All disease is environmental. If you work in a coal mine, you're going to have lung problems, and I believe that all of that trauma and living Hoboken was not a bed of roses as it is today. I mean, we lived in neighborhoods. I was assaulted. I was beaten up. I was humiliated by kids. We lived in the projects. We were on welfare. We would have to leave in the dark of night because we couldn't pay our bills, or if our phone was shut off because of lack of payment, my mom would get the paper and go into the obituary to see who died, and then call the telephone company and say that, this is Mrs. O'Hara. I just moved into this apartment. I need to get a new telephone line.
No
shit like
kidding.
That. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was all of that stuff that I my kryptonite was success, because also it's all environmental. My street, where Monroe Street, which was all Italian, Willow Avenue was all Irish, African American. It was the projects. Puerto Ricans were the projects. But the idea was Frank Sinatra was on 4th and Monroe. My mom grew up on that street. She knew Dolly Sinatra. And it was like Sinatra was able to get out, and Jimmy Roselli was able to get out, and I was stupid, lazy, crazy. I was dyslexic. I couldn't read. I had a lot of learning disabilities that were not thought to be that in those days. You were just
right.
And so,
and did you inherit any of that, Daniella? Do you have any learning disorders?
Yes, dyslexic, ADHD, and then also anxiety and depression.
Does it help you having a dad who has sort of tried to come to grips with these things? Is it something is that sort of what's behind this podcast?
Yeah, it was extremely helpful. And it's interesting because even though he would talk about it so much, and it was always his big thing is talk about it. If you're feeling this way, talk about it. For a long time, I wouldn't, maybe because I didn't understand what it was I was feeling, but also because I think I felt like I can't have anything wrong with me because I have to, be the okay person for mom and dad. I have to keep them okay.
Family disease.
Keep them together. My sister always said, she's like, mom and dad only stayed together because it would have destroyed you if they got divorced. Yeah. I don't know if they knew that they did it, or I would parent my parents. I felt like I had to, keep them okay. So then when I went to college, I completely broke down and cried nonstop for 3 days. And then so my parents were like, something else is wrong here. It's not just homesickness. We're going to take you home, go to community college, and we'll get you a therapist and all this stuff. So, but I would always encourage other people to talk. And then I eventually started talking more about it and being more open and honest about what I was feeling. But yeah, definitely inherited some of that. And then also just because my dad was going through stuff because he hasn't reconciled it from his childhood. There's a little trauma there, nothing compared to what he went through, but still impacted me.
Right. It doesn't skip a generation. That's something they're even talking about, how severe trauma can be actually registered in your DNA. It can get passed down. Yeah. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
There's a wonderful TED Talk. Dr. Nadine Burke, the Kaiser Permanente did a study, an 18-year study called the ACE study, adult childhood adolescent trauma, and if you with all of these questions they would ask you, if you had an alcoholic parent, you would get an ACE, and arguments in the family, or loss of employment, parents losing employment, or a whole myriad of questions. For every time you said yes, after 3 yeses, you had a 400% greater chance of being depressed later in life. If you had 5 or 6, you could have upper respiratory disease, certain cancers, if you were the type of person that held all of your feelings inside. But then through the study, they discovered that with cognitive therapies that you could also reverse the disease. So you could actually reverse and not get the cancer or not have asthma.
Now, I've gone through a lot of different types of therapy in my life because I suffer from depression and ADHD. I've been medicated for both for about 15 years. And I think my early therapy had a lot to do with going back to childhood stuff. I had a father who was an alcoholic. Both parents have depression. My dad died young. There was a lot of things that I needed to process. And now in the second half of my life, I'm finding, like you said, cognitive therapy, which is just looking at the thoughts, noticing that you're having them, and then moving away from them, as opposed to, I have to relive, things I went through when I was little, or otherwise I'm never going to be happy again. Like, do you draw from both of those types of therapy, and which one do you think is more effective for you?
It's all effective. It doesn't matter. Most of the insights where the light bulb went off was moments of just talking and coming to a conclusion where the doctor's just, scribbling on the pad. The other thing, it's like when you say you had an alcoholic father, it's like that was the symptom. Alcoholism. That was the cure to what the disease was. Like if you really did if you could go back and how old was he? Was he in the military? Did he experience Korean War? What have you? It's a family heirloom. What was his father like?
Right.
The culture, being Irish. It's like, it's the idea that, I look at John Kennedy becoming president and how proud all of the Irish and Catholic people were that our guy had become president. But when you think about what these people go through and the kind of father that they had, the Kennedys have, and the history of disease, it's a family disease. We're all crazy. The idea of who's not nuts. The only fortunate thing we have going for us is the discovery that we're nuts, because then we can start getting some relief.
Mm-hmm.
And which is difficult because then when you go back to the system that is still infected, that you've sort of tried to disinfect in your own life, they don't see you getting help. They don't see you labeling it as a disease. They see that as weak. And they see you as self-indulgent.
Yes.
And so you have to find a way to still connect to these people and keep them in your life, but at the same time protect the...
Or not. That's why they have therapists, because... it's like you can't I can't sit my mother down and say, Ma, I think the fact that your father was porking you may have done something to your head. Get the fuck out of here. That's, it's like, it's none of my business. But they used to say in the 12-step program is what people think about you is none of your business.
Right. I like that. I think I'm going to write that on my wall right now. Give me 1 second.
Have you noticed that we both have green walls?
That's right. It makes our eyes shine, doesn't it?
Yes.
Beautiful.
The Blarney.
The Blarney. And what do you have? Some kind of... What is your painting behind you? It's a yellow...
Oh, it's my favorite painting in the house.
Is it abstract, or do I just not have a good focus on it?
No, it's like a circus.
It's a circus.
Pinocchio at the circus.
Yeah, it's all of these circus clowns and fire-breathing clowns, and it's just, I just love it. A friend of mine gave it to me, but it just...
He has the coolest artwork, my dad.
It's the way I feel. It's just reminds me of all of the clowns in my life.
Yeah, and you need the clowns.
Yeah, and the clowns I play.
Right.
The uniforms.
So how does, as far as having all these things you talked about, like carrying around these feelings that you don't let out, like how much has acting been something that sort of helped you get towards your recovery because you were able to access and release some of these emotions? Like when you play
that's a great question, in that I have a whole conversation with a doctor at McLean Hospital, which is the great brain hospital in Massachusetts, where I go there to talk to these specialists and find out how I got crazy. By that point, I stopped taking mind-altering drugs and drinking. You know, at that point, I thought I was an alcoholic, and the thing is that, yeah, I became an alcoholic and a drug addict, but that's not my disease. You know, the idea of going into a room and identifying myself by my symptoms, that I'm just, my brain is nuts, and that if I take anything, it lets that nuts out, so I can't take anything. And so I asked the guy, Dr. Bob Irvin, I said, because of the way I was trained through the Stanislavski system, which was a Russian, I should have known better, right? Follow the Russians. But using your history, your emotional history, to sublimate it through the characters that you're playing. And by mastering that, to be able to evoke emotions from experiences through the character so that they were authentic feelings. Did I make myself crazy? Did I like break something in my brain because of that training?
Right.
And he said,
Pandora's box.
Yeah. His answer was that no, you probably saved your life.
Right.
That you sublimated all of those unresolved emotional feelings, and you were able to relieve the pressure through those characters.
Interesting. Were you ever not in control of those feelings as they came out? Because I know you went to HB Studios, right?
Yes.
Herbert Berghoff Studios. And I did the Meisner technique. And so a lot of that was the kind of preparation work you had. I had a woman punch me in the face and split my lip open in a scene because she was doing that kind of work and she wasn't in control of it. Did you ever have an experience like that?
Wow.
I had nothing that serious, but I was in a scene when I was a kid. I was 21 years old, and I was doing this. I was in a rehearsal, and it was an Israel Horowitz play, and I started, and the character's flipping out, and I'm using a lot of this emotional past. And I started banging my head against the floor, and I didn't black out, but I don't remember. It was explained to me that I started scratching my face, and they had the director and the stage manager to grab me and then hold me down and talk me off the ledge. So yeah, not used responsibly, because Meisner, Bobby Lewis, who I studied with extensively, these guys, they all came from, Stella Adler. Adler actually went to Paris and worked with Stanislavski, and he drew a chart, breaking down the character, how to build a character.
Right.
But in the training that I received, what they call effective memory, John Lenn was one of my teachers and a master at that, where he'd always create a safe place,
right, so
that you were the only person there in his chair, and while the class is watching. So it had to be old memories, and the experience was you weren't conjuring up an emotion, you were discovering if there was even an emotion there. And then, once you found that emotion, then you could use that only when necessary, only if the material wasn't moving you. In those days, when these guys were teaching that, Meisner, they were all group theater. Movies was just beginning. So this was a kind of technique that they were using for theatrical experience that you had to get up for eight shows a week.
Sure, and it's bigger than movies, right? I mean, I think almost with that kind of intensity, like, Brando is the guy who came out of Berghoff, the place you studied, or did he help create it, or was he a student there?
He studied with Stella Adler, and then it was Bobby Lewis and Elia Kazan and Cheryl Crawford who started the Actors Studio.
Okay.
And so Bobby Lewis had the professionals, the kids that were working, and he had like 13 people, Montgomery Clift and Brando and Eli Wallach and Jackson, and then Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen.
Right.
They were in the professional class, and then you had Kazan, who had all of the younger kids that were, students learning the process. So, the influence that Lewis had on those other teachers who became teachers. Uta Hagen became a teacher. It was actually Berghoff Hagen Studios.
They were married.
They were married, and both had tremendous careers in the theater. But
and then out of that school was like De Niro and Pacino and
that's all there
Jack
was in New York in those days. That's all there was. That was, and like anything else, I think that a lot of people wanted, if you could get into the studio, the Actors Studio, you didn't have to pay. It was gratis.
Right.
And it was, and the connections, the lobbying and how you could, get to know people within the industry.
Right.
It's like it was very political. All politics are local.
Yeah. All right, so one thing I wanted to bring up with you is I'm good friends with Bobby Funaro from Caroline's Comedy Club, who originally had your role of Ralph Cifaretto on The Sopranos, and then I think he did a couple rehearsals, and they said he's not right for it. And then they brought you in, and he was working as a manager at Caroline's Comedy Club at the time, where I was a comedian.
Bobby, but he wound up playing a different part, right?
Yeah, he ended up playing Eugene.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, and you got his part, and I think there was a reason. I can't remember the reason why he gave, but it was legitimate. It was a dynamics thing. It was like a chemistry thing with Gandolfini. And
well, he and Jimmy are good friends, right?
Yes. Yeah, they used to hang out in clubs in the city together. And
yeah, that I wasn't aware of this. But from my story was because I was a good friend of David Chase's from years ago. Good friend. We know each other. We have mutual friends, Larry Connor, and David liked my work and talked to me about doing something season 2, and I said, no, I want to do something. If I'm going to do something, I want something that'd be good for me. It's good for you to have me in your show, but I want it to be good for me. Like I want it to be a part I can sink my teeth in. So then he called the following season, which would have been season 3. He said, look, this new guy, season 3, season 4, 2 seasons, and then you're going to go up against Tony, and then you lose out. And I said, oh, okay. And HBO's got a real legacy for being cheap. All due respect, no hard feelings. I don't work cheap. I want my numbers. If you can't do it, knock me off the table now. And that's exactly what he did.
Uh-huh.
So I was out of the running. And then a while later, we were actually moving to Connecticut. I got a call from my agent and said, look, they changed their mind. They're giving you everything you want. They're giving you everything you want. And I said, well, this is a hardship. They want me to leave in 2 days. I got a wife and family. And he said, you're moving to Connecticut in 3 days. I said, yeah, but they don't know that. So we got HBO to, fly everybody, pay for the moving van. It was nice.
That's fantastic. Yeah, make them want you. That's
You
the
should
key,
be an
right?
agent now, Dad. He's so good at that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
Should be an
called being
agent.
it's called being Italian. Yeah, negotiate everything.
The thing.
So by the time you came in, it was season 3, and
Yeah, and I had to catch up. So they were already doing episode 4, and I had to reshoot 3 episodes. Because I guess Bobby, I guess he did 3 episodes before they decided.
I didn't realize that.
That's-
I thought he just got the role and rehearsed. I didn't know he'd actually shot anything.
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I didn't ask many questions. I didn't even know this until he told me a while later.
Wow. Was it difficult the first time you had to do a scene and go kind of toe to toe with Tony, as this guy who is the alpha male on the show, and I don't know as a person if he had that energy?
No. First of all, I don't have HBO. And I never saw the show. So David sent me 3 or 4 episodes that I looked at to get an idea, a taste of the tone of the show. And the scene that I had, the first scene that I had was outside a pizzeria in New Jersey somewhere, deep in New Jersey, not the kind of New Jersey I was familiar with.
Yeah.
And it was just me and him, like a 2-page scene. And, we're rehearsing and... they're deciding where to put the camera, and he just leaned in. He leaned into me, and he put his hand on top of my hand, and he said, "I just want to say it's a pleasure and an honor to be working with you." And that took any nervousness, because when you coming to a show, even as a guest actor,
Yeah.
it could be for a lot of people, it could be nerve-wracking. I never allowed myself that luxury. I didn't give it's like I would look at the camera. I remember the first time I ever saw a movie camera, I was doing extra work on Crazy Joe with Peter Boyle and Rip Torn, and I went and looked in the lens, and I looked in the eye of the camera, and I said, "You're not going, you're not going to scare me. Fuck you. I belong here."
Wow.
And that was always my attitude, is like, it's like a wrestling match.
How much I think about great actors, and I put you in that category. I can't say enough about how much I respect your work and the consistency of it and the confidence of it. And I wonder about being an actor, how much of it is naturally you? How much, a show like Sopranos, where you're doing a character that, you can't learn that accent. You can't learn that swagger. You can't learn to stare down the barrel of a camera without blinking.
Well, I think you can. I think people, are practitioners. If you look at Pygmalion or My Fair Lady, Henry Higgins knew how to be able to break it down phonetic so that you could. So yeah, you can learn an actor, and there's a lot of British actors that do it smashingly, and but the essence, what makes a great actor, Katharine Hepburn once said, Dick Cavett asked her, you could actually Google it. And he said, what makes a great actor? And she goes, I don't know. It's either chemistry or magic or something, but whatever it is, I have it, and, and it's like, Anthony Hopkins. I had the luxury when I was a kid. I had no money, but I would second act Broadway plays, and somehow HB Studio, they were doing previews for Equus, and they had a limited amount of seats for kids to come up and see the play. And I saw Anthony Hopkins in Equus. I had no idea who he was. It was breathtaking, riveting, unbelievable. And then, it's a long run, and I used to second act plays because I couldn't afford to buy a ticket.
Second act, if people don't know, that means that after intermission, you go in and watch
You
the
sneak in
half.
and find an empty seat and sit down. So then I saw Anthony Perkins do the role, and then Richard Burton went in to do it because he was getting ready to do the actual movie version of it.
Right.
And I recall seeing Richard Burton on stage, and I've never seen anybody on stage that charismatic in my goddamn life to this day ever.
Yeah.
But he wasn't authentic. I didn't believe him. Anthony Hopkins, he took me into his soul, and that's a gift. That's not something you can teach in an acting class.
Right.
You either have that gift or you don't. And I think those who have it pay a terrible price for it. I think that kind of talent, if you look at Montgomery Clift, Marilyn Monroe, Spencer Tracy, Marlon Brando, Elizabeth Taylor, with Richard Burton, there's a tremendous price to be paid unless you get help. And those survivors like Anthony Hopkins, God bless him, at 82, he just won his second Academy Award.
Yeah, right.
He's worked very hard, and he's very open and honest talking about the work that he's it's a life lesson. It's to be able to make you better. I mean, writers for years they were drinking themselves to death, and then Alcoholics Anonymous saves a lot of people, and they found out. Well, Jesus, did you just see the Hemingway documentary?
No, I got to see that.
Holy Christ! That guy was a nightmare.
Yeah.
He had 85 concussions, was blown up at 21. And it was his books weren't from imagination. They were like documentaries.
Yeah.
He experienced everything.
Yeah.
So it's a gift that comes with a tremendous price. And so here we are. We're talented people, but we have this thing that. Who told me this? My friend Dr. Bob told me this. He said the best explanation for depression that I ever heard. He said you get a guy who is well adjusted and he wins $1 million cash. And he says, oh, my God, this $1 million, I'm going to be able to buy a house for my mother. I'm going to get a new car. I'm going to send my kid to school. It's going to be great. You get somebody with depression. They go, oh, my God, my mother's going to want a house. My wife's going to want a car. My kid's going to want the money to go to school. I mean, by the end of the day, I'm going to be broken than I am now. And that's depression.
That's great.
It's like, for me, the glass is half empty and somebody pissed in it.
All right. Well, listen. I want to recommend that people check out the podcast. It's you've been doing it for a few months now, and
yes.
You've already had on some great guests.
Bonnie Hunt, Chaz Palminteri, all of these wonderful people who talk about how they regulate and manage their emotional hygiene.
Right.
Waylon Payne we had on. I know I'm missing. Help me out, somebody.
Judy Gold.
Yep.
George Wallace.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So yeah. Please, thank you for having us. We're huge fans, and I'm licking my chops to interview you now.
Yes, and that's the other guest we haven't listed. Greg Fitzsimmons will be on the show.
That's right.
It's No Kidding Me Too podcast with you, Joey Pants, your lovely daughter Daniella, and produced by Robert and Mark Krantz, my good friend Mark Krantz, who's a lunatic from Jersey in his own right.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We're all
and his brother Gary Krantz.
That's what I meant, Gary. I'm friends with both of them, and I confused his name. Yeah.
But they're equal lunatics.
Yeah.
It's actually like a whole Jersey produced thing. Everybody's from Jersey.
I didn't know they were from Jersey until I've known Mark for years, but I didn't know he was Jersey.
Oh yeah, he's Jersey. I mean, the story about those brothers growing up, they were nuts. They did some crazy shit. I don't know how people survive being teenage boys in New Jersey. It's insane.
It's luck, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, to be continued on your podcast. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Of course.